All right, so I've started recording the webinar, and here we go with radical relevance. Are you positioned to win the race for relevance? Did you even know there was a race for relevance? Well, there is. Look, here's what we've learned in this world of ours, that without question, it's an over-communicated world, right? Of 6 emails that are ignored the first day, 5 are ignored forever, right? So how many of your emails are being sent to prospects, clients, friends, you name it, right? 26% of people want to totally delete their email and start over. Ringing phones and email lowers IQs by 10 points. So if you're on this webinar and you're multitasking, you just lowered your IQ. And of course, spending time with me, you've probably lowered your IQ as well. 60% of computer users monitor their email in the bathroom. I thought that was kind of funny. I'm one of those. So, you know, how do you cut through all this noise, right? How do you cut through all the noise in the marketplace? It's over-communicated. Well, you got to hit the bullseye in the brains of your prospects to create resonance. And there really is a literal bullseye in the brain. It's called the amygdala, and we'll talk a little bit about that later. But it creates resonance. It resonates with them. They go, I should pay attention to you, and hopefully moves them to action. What the brain is doing constantly, yours, mine, just the primitive part of our brain is going safe, unsafe, safe. We're constantly monitoring our environment. And in all that, we're deciding relevant, not relevant. You know, do I pay attention to that? Do I not pay attention to that? I was thinking about this walking down the concourse in the airport last week and thinking, oh, the messages that are being bombarded. Well, we ignore most of them, right? But every now and then something jumps out and we do a second take. And then if it's super relevant, we might go over and look at the message. If it's not very relevant, then we just say, oh, that's nice, and move on, right? So same thing with our prospects, the people that we're trying to contact. So what's the ultimate relevance machine? Well, you can probably tell by the colors of the text here that it's Google, right? I don't have to tell you this. You go on to Google, you start to put in a search term, and it finishes the search before you even finish typing, right? It already knows what you're looking for. It's uncanny, almost scary. And then look at Amazon, similar phenomenon. I just happened to find this particular book on Amazon the other day, but you type in a book you're looking for, or any kind of product, and it'll show, you know, other people have also bought this or looked at this or bought this, or you should consider this. It's relevant. And if you're on Amazon Prime like me, it's totally sucking my retirement savings. You know, free shipping, you order it. So total relevant machine. When's the last time you walked down on the aisle to buy water? Like, look at all the waters there are, right? There's artesian water, there's filtered water, there's spring water, there's smart water, dumb water, sugar, no sugar, you know, soda, fizz, no fizz, you name it, right? I don't even know what dumb water is. Toothpaste, same thing, right? Even with each brand, like Colgate here, right? And then Arm & Hammer, and then Sensodyne, you name it. They have a million different, you know, brands in their effort to be relevant. So if commodities like water and toothpaste go to these lengths to be bullseye relevant, what makes you and me think that we can thrive by not attending to this critical aspect of our business? If we want to get our message cutting through all that noise, we got to make sure that we're bullseye relevant, or I would say radically relevant. Now, I said that. It's always nice when you can quote yourself, right? You should quote yourself with your clients too. So I'm going to tell you a really quick story that's going to really lay this point for you, and then we're going to get into some very specific strategies and tactics that you can employ. But bear with me because I think you'll appreciate the story. So before I was in this business years ago, I was in a kind of a cookbook, specialty cookbook business. And my first cookbook was on strawberries, you know, and I sold them at Pick Your Own Strawberry Farms. I identified that there were about 1,500 Pick Your Own Strawberry Farms around the country, and I sold them to those farmers, and farmers were great. They paid their bills on time, right? It was just a great group to do business with. But strawberry season, very short season. So what had a longer season? Well, apples. So I came out with an apple cookbook. And what I learned is apples, there were about 1,600, by the way, 1,700 pick your own apple farms, and then other roadside stands, obviously. And apple farms use bees to pollinate the flowers, right? So they have honey. So I published a honey cookbook. And I kind of rounded it out with a vegetable cookbook, and I was selling about 80,000 books a year. But that wasn't enough. I wanted to get a little bit bigger. So I decided to try to publish cookbooks for manufacturers, like with grills and smokers and all kinds of, George Foreman grill, all that kind of stuff, right? So this is before Foreman was around with this. But the company name was WRC Publishing. Well, that means nothing to anybody, right? Except for my parents, William R. Cates. That's what that means. And then I had like an amazing awareness. I go, what if I change my company name to American Cookie Guild? And all of a sudden, sales just skyrocketed. I mean, who would you buy a cookbook from? WRC Publishing or the American Cooking Guild, right? And that's what made all the difference. I did a smoker cookbook. I did a holiday cookbook for a greeting card company. And I did a cookbook called Hooked on Seafood. I happened to get it on a TV show in Baltimore called People Are Talking with Richard Schier. And do you recognize who the woman is? That's right. That's Oprah Winfrey. She was one of the hosts of People Are Talking. And there was somebody watching that show. I get a call from an executive with a canned tuna manufacturing company. He says, Mr. Case, I'd like to know what it would take to purchase a large quantity of Hooked on Seafood. We want to give it away in grocery stores as a premium to help us sell more canned tuna. I go, I don't know, let's talk about it. And we negotiated, and finally Bumblebee Tuna, the largest canned tuna manufacturer in the world, ordered 400,000 copies of that book, Hooked on Seafood. And that sale changed my life. First of all, I was the rep, and I got a big commission. Second of all, I was the company owner, and I got all the rest. and I built the business. I eventually sold that business in 1989. And I tell you the story not to brag, although it's nothing wrong with bragging a little bit, but I tell you the story because that's when I learned the power of radical relevance. Radical relevance is essentially having the right product or service, right, to the right market or person, your target market. We'll talk more about that in a minute. With the right message, right? Conveying the right message through the right medium, right? Is it LinkedIn? Is it Facebook? Is it over the phone? Is it a mailer? Is it seminars, right? How do we get that right message to the right medium with the right offer, right? What's the next step? Like I was coaching a guy just this morning who has people coming to a seminar, and he wanted people to come for an appointment. He was getting pretty good people coming to the appointment, but he wasn't setting it up right. So he wasn't converting enough people on that appointment to new clients. And so we had to look at his offer. And of course, the right time. Ultimately, the timing has to be right. And look, you guys are financial professionals. You know that when someone has money in motion or someone has a life-changing event, their life event, their radar is a little higher up for the work that you do than if they're just kind of going about their life quietly, right? So the timing obviously is very critical here. So how do we make all this work? By the way, I wanted to put this slide up early because I know some people have to leave on the earlier side. So if you want to get a special report that I've written on this, will help you go through this and actually has some exercises for you and your partner, your staff, your team to go through. Then just go to valuepropositiongenerator.com, valuepropositiongenerator.com. It's free, and we'll send it over to you, and I think you'll find it very helpful. I would love to get your feedback, how you use it, what works, what questions you have, because it's all part of me writing my new book. So how do you get through to these prospects, right? How do we cut through all this noise? Well, bullhorn marketing, yelling it as loud as you can, that certainly doesn't work. Shotgun marketing definitely doesn't work. It's very difficult for you to create a reputation for yourself when you have a shotgun approach to your marketing, right? It's much easier to create a reputation for yourself and your business when you're a little bit more targeted. So how you get through is with a relevant and compelling value proposition. It has to be relevant to capture their interest, to get their attention, and then compelling to move them through the decision, whatever that is. It could be to return your email, your voicemail. If you're not getting your voicemails and emails returned as often as you would like, if you're doing seminars and people aren't coming for the next step, whatever next step you want someone to take, if they're not taking it, then either you're not relevant enough in your messaging, it's too much about you and not about them, or you're not creating a sense of compelling, of movement. And I'll talk to you about what it takes to create that in just a second, right? So, and it has to be continual, compelling and relevant, compelling and relevant. Otherwise, we lose people along the way. So I often get asked, so Bill, are you talking about your elevator pitch? No, I'm not talking about my elevator pitch, and I'm also not talking about my unique selling proposition or your unique selling proposition. I'm not saying those things aren't important. They are, but those are subsets of a value proposition, right? Your value proposition is the sum total of all the value you provide to your prospects, to your clients, through that client journey, to the centers of influence, right? And it's the elevator pitch or the unique selling proposition or the positioning statement. That's just a subset. That's just a way to communicate some of your value. I'm going to give you a little different way to look at your value here and some ideas on how to communicate it more appropriately. So here's a little pop quiz for you. Don't worry, there's no math and spelling doesn't count. When is the last time you assessed, did a full assessment of your value proposition? When's the last time that you looked at your value proposition from the minute you meet someone to all through the client journey, that you've taken a look at this? Some people never do this, right? They never pay attention to their full value proposition. And then sometimes we wonder, especially newer folks in this business, why they don't ask for referrals, or they're not doing as well as they could because they don't really understand their value in the first place. So if you've not really done this, I'm going to show you right now a simple way. Maybe simple is the wrong word because it's not the easiest thing in the world to do, but it's a very powerful thing to do. So the first thing you want to do is either by yourself, preferably with someone else. If you have staff, great, or a partner, great. If you don't, with a colleague, a friend, somebody, sit down, and from the minute you meet someone, when you talk to them on the phone, they email you, you email them, you follow up on the leads, they come to a seminar, whatever it is, from the minute you meet them all the way through the entire journey of your relationship with them, what are all the points of value? Look at all the questions you ask, all the various questions you ask in your discovery process, your fact finder, all the things you teach along the way. What are all those points of value? And by the way, if you're a veteran and you have staff and you want staff to really buy into your value, you want everybody in your firm to really get the value that you already kind of get internally, then this is an incredible exercise for them to do, because now everyone gets on the same page of all the value that we bring. And then another step that most people don't think about, unfortunately, is you want to talk to some of your clients. Now, you don't talk to all your clients, just some of your clients. You have clients who love you. You have clients who have kind of a marketing mindset. You have clients who are successful in business, and some friends. Talk to them, because you're going to hear things from them that you wouldn't think about. They're going to give you phrases and words and concepts to think about your value in ways you haven't thought. I'll give you an example. And I was working with a client of mine, Michael Schmitz, out with Secure Futures out in San Mateo, California, and I was asking these questions, and Michael says, Bill, you make asking for referrals as natural as breathing. I go, wow, that's pretty nice. Thank you, Michael. And where did you come up with that? I don't know. It's just what occurred to me. I go, that's brilliant. Can I use that? Can I quote you? And he said, yeah, of course. So of course I use it all the time now, and I quote Michael Schmitz for that. And so you're going to hear things from your clients that you wouldn't think. You're going to hear the verbiage. You may not realize this. Maybe you're aware, maybe you're not, but you use a lot of jargon in how you talk about your value. And your clients, maybe don't want to look ignorant, or maybe they kind of get it. But you got to simplify things a little bit here, and running this by your clients, you will learn so much. And then you come back and you start to really internalize, and now you're ready to talk and communicate your value. Now, you can start using some of these things that I'm going to share with you here today before you do this full evaluation. I don't want that to stop you from doing this, but ultimately that will make it even more powerful, right? So, where do we communicate our value? Well, everywhere, right? I mean, anything you say, write, show to a prospect, to a client, to anybody, it's talking about your value. Your employees, your staff, your partners, everybody on your team, right? Everything you do. So, pop quiz number 2. What's the purpose of communicating our value, right? Why do we want to talk about our value? Well, I mean, is it just to convey your value to others? In other words, to describe what you do to other people? Well, yeah, I guess we want to do that, right? Yeah, okay. To attract the right people. Well, I guess we want to do that too, right? We want to make sure we say the right things that will attract the right people into our world, repel the wrong people. Now, there's an interesting concept. Some people have trouble with that one. Or do we want to create action? Do we want to move them to act? And the answer is all of the above, right? This is the purpose of communicating. We want to let people know what we do, right? We want to make sure that we attract the right people into our world. It's got to be attractive, irresistible, magnetic, whatever word you want to put around it. It resonates in their brain so they pay attention to it, right? And it should disqualify the people that aren't mutually qualifying. Now, if you're brand new in this business, they fog a mirror, meaning they're breathing, you'll talk to them. I get that. But once you get past that point, now you start to have to talk about what you do in a way that's going to segment a little bit. People who aren't relevant to you and where you're trying to take your business, right? You're not the right advisor or agent for them. And so it's got to be a good match for both parties. I was talking to a guy just started our coaching program today, and one of the things he said is that he wants to segment his book a little bit more. He wants to work with women who have $1 million or more of investable assets. And I'm thinking, oh, I should date women with $1 million or more, right? Well, I'm engaged now, so I shouldn't say that. But in any event, but he's been leery of doing that. He's been wary of limiting his focus in that way, and we're going to show him how to do that through the coaching program. Time to take action, right? You want to make sure that you create the action that compels them to move forward. And I'm going to share with you a few things that you can apply right away to help create more action in your world, right? So, and then fit. Ultimately, this is the answer to the question that everybody wants. Every one of your prospects wants to know the answer to this question. Are you the right person for me? Is this a good fit? You go to Best Buy, look for a TV, right? You got 100 TVs on the walls. What's the best TV for you? Eventually, you're going to find the one that's the right fit. And so here's a question for you. We could spend the whole hour just on this. When you are with a prospective client and you believe that you are a fit for them and they are a fit for you, do you tell them that? Do you let your prospects know when you believe the match is right? And do you tell them why? Very important here. So I'm doing a series of programs for a firm, due diligence meetings, and I do surveys before that. And I ask everybody, pretty successful folks in the financial world, when you believe you're a good fit for your prospects, do you tell them that you believe that? And only about, on a regular basis, and only 25% of those folks said that they did it on a regular basis. So if you don't, what do? You just kind of hope that they're going to say, well, how do I sign up? Do you have an app with you? Here's what we want to make sure we do. See, our clients, they want to hear the confidence from you. They want to hear and feel your confidence that it's a fit. And so it's one thing to say, well, I believe we're a good fit. I believe we can do great work for you. Right? Well, that's better than nothing. But what if you said, based on this conversation, I believe that would be we are a good fit to help you reach your goals, your financial goals. And here's why. You said this, we have this process, this tool here that we can help you figure that out and get you where you need to go. Right? So tell them you believe you're a good fit, but tell them why you believe that. And they feel that confidence. It's not about being arrogant. It's just about being clear and confident. It shows you listen to them. They told you what their issues were. They told you what's important to them. And if you sincerely believe you can help them with those things and perhaps introduce them to a few other people that can maybe help in areas you can't, then you want to let them know that you are indeed a fit. Very, very important to communicate that. All right, so let's deal with this word relevance a little bit. Let's dig deeper on this one. When I talk about radical relevance, right? Well, there's kind of two levels of relevance. The first one is strategic relevance. And this is the strategic decisions that you make every now and then in your business, right? Who fits your business? Who are you trying to attract? Who are your processes geared towards? And who doesn't, of course. And so this is where target market comes into play, be it like this guy, women with $1 million, business owners in a certain industry. I'll give you a couple examples in a minute. And then below that would be the ideal client within that target market. Now, I think you can see that if you know what your target market is, who you're trying to attract, and you get a sense of the ideal client profile, what, you know, the psychographic demographics, then this is going to determine how you talk about your value, right? This is going to help you figure out the words to use because you know the problems that these people are facing. And generally speaking, the narrower the better. The narrower the message, the more targeted the message to your target market, your ideal client, the more effective it will be, the more powerful it will be. Here's the power of a target market, and there's lots of different types of target markets. First of all, it's a lot easier to identify your prospects, right? The more narrow you go, small business owners in a specific industry, right? Employees within a large company, executives within that large company, C-level employees within certain types of businesses, all the different ways that you narrow, right? Physicians or, you know, dentists, chiropractors, you know, all kinds, you know, folks who work for the railroad, folks, you know, people, the first responders, police and firemen, right? It doesn't have to be a fluent individual. It could be anybody, but it's easier to identify these people. And of course, because you know them, you know their world, you know how they're compensated, you know their predilections to some degree, it's easier to deliver more real value, more relevant, compelling message because you know their world, you talk their language a little bit, right? And it's easier to create a reputation because you can sponsor events, you can you know, join an association. They see that you know people like themselves, and they see that you're focusing on their world, and it's much easier for them to refer you because they see who you're focusing on, right? And because of that, you're more referable. They know who you're trying to reach. One of the reasons why a lot of clients don't give referrals is because you never taught them. You never shared with them who you do the best work for, who you serve the best. And so that's the power of a target market. And it's not a product in search of a market. You want to, generally speaking, first you want to find a clearly defined market to which you bring highly relevant products and services, right? Now, you may be product oriented, and okay, that's where you are, that's fine. And you still want to make sure you find a target market that really knows they need what you have, right? You want to try to avoid the double sale. And when you target a market, you can come closer to avoiding the double sale. A double sale is not just convincing that they should work with you, but it's convincing them that they actually need the product or service in the first place. That's a challenge in financial services, right? Because when it comes to financial planning, when it comes to life insurance and DI and long-term care, a lot of mistaken assumptions around that. And a lot of people don't even know the value of having that. So it's a bit of a double sale. But the clearer your defined market, usually the more you can get away from that double sale. So let me tell you about Todd McDonald. All right, so Todd is the principal at Broadstone Advisors. This is his website. Now, does this look like a financial advisor's website? No. But if you're a family-owned, closely held, heavy construction firm, is this the site for you to look at? You better believe it, right? Todd works with people, closely held, family-owned businesses that build roads, they build runways, they build bridges, big stuff. And so his website reflects his target market. You got to make sure that your website reflects your target market, but the more narrow, the more powerful. Now, if someone isn't closely held family business working in heavy construction, Todd's not the guy for them, and he'll recommend somebody else. But if they are, man, his message is like right on. Now, how did Todd do this, right? Why did he do this? Well, when he was getting in this business 20-odd years ago, he went to a lot of the top producers in the business. That's Todd on the left there with the white hard hat on. And he went to a lot of top producers. He said, if you could start over, if you could do it over, what would you do differently? And he says the recurring theme from all these top producers was, I wouldn't try to be a jack of all trades. I wouldn't be everything to everybody. I'd narrow my focus. I'd pick a target market. I'd pick a niche. And so he did that from the very beginning. When he was in high school and college, not only did he mow lawns, but he paved driveways. And now look what he's done out of that paving driveway business, right? And he's extremely successful, close to $1 million, $2 million business. And you look at his website and you're going, oh man, where's the clip art of the retired couple walking hand in hand on the beach? I really miss that, you know? Well, you know, look at this website. Now, I don't I don't know this woman, so I made sure her name didn't show up. But she says, she's essentially saying, are you divorced or are you, widowed? And so women who are divorced or widowed come to this and they go, yeah, that's me, right? She gets me. I get that, right? And a single mom with her children, right? So it reflects the target market. And now we got to make sure that the market we pick is large enough, right, to fulfill our needs. So this guy I was telling you about in Canada who wanted to focus on $1 million, women. He lives in kind of a small town in northern Ontario, and I said, are there enough people there? He says, well, I know I'm going to have to expand geographically a little bit, but I'm willing to do that. So, okay, that's something you have to consider when you're picking the market. Is there enough of these people, and do they have the financial capacity to take advantage of the work that you do? So the bottom line is, if you try to appeal to everyone, you run the risk of appealing to no one, right? Your stuff is watered down. I was consulting with a guy yesterday from from Honolulu, Hawaii, and you look at his website, and now he has a target market, but you look at his website, you can't tell it. And when I had him describe his process a little bit, he didn't talk about his target market there. So even in his head, he's got this sense of who he's trying to attract, but he doesn't communicate it in any way. So, I mean, how's he going to reach his goals in reaching his target market if he's not talking about it to people in his website, in his LinkedIn profile, in his emails, you name it, you got to talk about it, right? So don't forget, if you haven't done this yet, go to valuepropositiongenerator.com, valuepropositiongenerator.com. You'll get this. This is the precursor to my new book on this. It'll give you some of the things we're talking about here, and some exercises to go through to help you communicate your value more powerfully. All right, so that's a little bit of strategic relevance. Now let's go to tactical relevance. Tactical relevance is really what you do to prepare for that phone call or meeting with the prospect or center of influence, as the case may be. Now, there's two types of research, two types of ways to prepare, essentially. There's cold and warm. So cold is like this. So cold is you go on their website, right? You go on their LinkedIn profile. Here are 3 tools. Take a picture of the slide or screen capture this one. These sites are run by a friend of mine, Sam Richter, very smart guy out of Minneapolis. They're free, so you don't pay anything to go on these sites. And so one is it kind of the first one picks up smaller town newspapers and other stuff. Even if you're in a large city, there are smaller newspapers, and it picks up stuff there, website stuff, internet stuff. One's a search for Facebook, the other for LinkedIn. So these are just some ways of doing that cold research, and this is good. This is important. You sometimes can learn about hobbies. You can sometimes learn about their business. You can learn about where they grew up sometimes. Lots of different things you can learn. And then really, I think even a more powerful type of research is warm research. And this is information you can only get from someone who knows that prospect, right? Usually your referral source or center of influence or client, whoever that is. And so let me give you one question or a couple questions that you want to ask. I mean, certainly you want to say, why do you think he or she would be a good match for the work I do, and that sort of stuff. But what's going on in their life that's most important to them right now, right? What's the most important thing going on in their life right now? Now, they're going to tell you kids, retirement, business, travel, who knows, whatever they tell you, hobbies. Now, you know that money intersects every aspect of one's life, right? And so whatever's going on in their world, if you can tie the value of what you do to that, then you have a more relevant, more compelling message. Most people don't take the time to even ask this question, right? And then use it in that email or phone call. Tell me something you like or admire or respect about her or about him, right? This also will help you learn sometimes things you have in common. I was introduced to a guy who was real active in the Boys and Girls Clubs in Elmhurst, Illinois, and I did some work with the Boys and Girls Clubs in Washington, D.C., and so we immediately had something in common that I wouldn't have known had I not asked this question. You can find some fun things around here, too, so sometimes you can have some humor at the beginning of a message. You know, one way to create a sense of relevance and connection is to use humor, and it's your referral source that will give you that information. So you got to be super relevant in everything you do, right? In formulating your marketing plan, in delivering your message, when you go to a business networking event or a social networking event, in giving gifts. You name it, you want to make sure that you are always trying to be relevant. Now, when I say gift giving, compliance approved, of course. But when I get a referral from someone or an introduction, which is what I'm usually going for, is the introduction, I'll go on that, I'll go on that person's LinkedIn profile, see where they went to school. All right, they went to the University of Maryland, where I went. Great, go Terps. And then I'll get like coasters for about $15 on Amazon, no shipping, right? I take it, write a note, either hand deliver it or mail it to them. And so it's relevant to them, and it has more value, and you get more bang for your buck when you create a more relevant, gift. All right, so that's a little bit about relevance. Let me take a sip of water here. I don't see any questions coming through yet. So please don't hesitate to type your questions in. And if you have a question later, you can always send that to me. I'll give you my email address again. All right, so what's the biggest objection, challenge that you and I face with our prospects, right? Of all the things, doing the work you do, during the work I do, what's the biggest objection or challenge? Well, I think you'd agree that it's inertia, right? Is getting people to actually take action. And, they're stuck in where they are, especially around financial stuff, right? The devil they know is better than the devil they don't know, or they're meaning to get around to it. All right, this is disrespectful to your prospects and clients, so maybe not that. So sometimes they're just confused, right? A confused mind doesn't buy. A confused mind doesn't take action. People that are confused about their financial situation, even though they want relief from that confusion, if they haven't been introduced, referred, connected with someone who might be able to help them and promise that relief from that confusion, then they're still stuck. They're not moving anywhere. I can't tell you how many people I've talked about the work I do, and I work with financial professionals, financial advisors, and they say, oh, that's probably someone I should talk to. I said, well, have you done a financial plan? They go, no, we should really do that. And I'll give them the name of somebody, and they still don't do anything, right? So it's inertia. That's our biggest obstacle. So anybody know who this guy is? When I do a live event, they go, oh, Mozart, Beethoven, I don't know. And I said, well, let me draw a picture, and I draw this picture, and they go, oh, okay, that's got to be that science guy, Newton, right? Thank you, Leslie. Good job. Leslie put Newton in right away. So she's either really smart or she saw me talk about this before. And so Isaac Newton, right, has these laws of motion. He's got the first law of motion, which says essentially every object continues in a state of rest or in a state of motion in a straight line at a constant speed. All right, that's too much, right? Meaning a body in motion, will stay at rest. The body at rest will sorry, I'm getting these messages coming in now. Leslie liked my comment, and my assistant Jennifer says, I want Leslie on my trivia team. Good job, Leslie. Kudos. You got your 15 minutes of fame there. So every object, a body in motion tends to stay in motion. A body at rest tends to remain at rest unless what? Unless acted upon by an outside force, right? It's the outside force that will cause a change in inertia, right? It's inertia of movement. It's inertia of non-movement. And related to inertia is mass, right? The heavier the mass, then the more energy it takes to get it moving, and the more energy it takes to stop it from moving, right? Makes sense. So here's the truth about your value proposition. Your value proposition has to give your prospects a kick in the mass. If you don't give them a kick in the mass, then they're not going to get going and doing the work you do, right? All right. Donald, 15 seconds of fame. That's it. Donald, you just got 2. All right, compelling. Now let's talk about compelling. Let's talk about creating movement, right? So let me tell you something about decision making. Antonio Damasio, a renowned neuroscientist, using a technology called magnetic resonant tomography, not easy to say, that's why they call it MRT, showed the part of the brain that is active during the decision process, right? When someone's making a decision, this part of the brain shows, that it's active. And here's what Antonio found, is that subjects who could not feel emotions, the brain was damaged in some way, could not make decisions. They couldn't even decide if they were going to have wheat flakes, corn flakes, or oatmeal for breakfast. because they couldn't feel an emotion. What we know about decision making is that the bottom line, the heart, the junction point of every decision you and I make is emotion. It's emotional. I know, analytics don't like to hear that, but it's true. At the end of the line, at the bottom, or at the bottom line is when someone's with you and thinking about doing business with you, honey, I think we can trust him. Yeah, I think we can too, right? It's a feeling of trust, et cetera, et cetera. So if we want to move to take action, we have to hit an emotional part of the brain. Now, is it to solve a problem? Is it to take advantage of an opportunity, or to complete a task? Those are the three things that the brain that creates dopamine in the brain. They love this, right? The brain loves it when they can, get rid of a problem, solve a problem, or take advantage of an opportunity, or sometimes complete a task, meaning just get it done, right? Check it off. That's why agendas are great for the meetings that you go on with your clients, because they love checking that off. I don't know about you. I work from to-do lists. I love crossing it out, checking it off, all of that stuff. It creates a shot of dopamine in the brain. And so the most powerful there, of course, is solving a problem. But here's one thing we've learned in marketing, is that if you talk about the problem, talk about the pain, talk about the concern, talk about the gap, whatever word you want to put to it, if you don't present yourself as someone who has the solution to that, then your marketing message falls short. You're not going to create the movement you want. You want to make sure that you talk about a problem. And so, like, for instance, if I said, the 7 mistakes that people make around asking for referrals, well, that has some potential movement there. But if I say the 7 mistakes that people make around asking for referrals and how to avoid them, now you're a little more compelled to read that article, right? So the promise of a fix. All right, so how do we create compelling? How do we create movement? Well, we only have so much time to do this, but I'll give you a few ideas, certainly. We got to create action. So one of the best ways to create action is a promise of clarity, that you simplify the complicated. So this gentleman I was telling you earlier that does seminars, he does it at the local community college, and then he gets people to come in for a meeting, for an appointment. And like I said, he wasn't closing as many people as he wanted to. And so what he found is that at the end of these events, people were very confused, right? He gave them a ton of information, but they were confused. Now, that's not necessarily a bad thing for him, because the purpose of the meeting is to gain clarity. The purpose of the meeting is to mutually qualify and to see if he can serve these people and if they're interested. And then through the service, through the planning, through the working with him, then he will bring them clarity. But as you know, people are confused around this sort of stuff, whether it's a specific insurance product or whether it's just overall financial planning, people are confused. And so if you can promise a simplification, if that's part of your value proposition, if you're the kind of person that took things apart and put them back together because you like when you're a kid, because you like solving puzzles and you like to take a complicated situation that most people see as complicated and confusing, and you like to simplify that and bring your clients clarity and confidence, that's a very valuable proposition. It will create action. People want to move to a sense of clarity, right? They want to move to a sense of clarity because then they gain confidence. And that's a couple of emotional hits there of dopamine. Also, tying it to an urgency, a time frame. If you can tie what you do to a time frame, what's the cost of action? What's the cost of inaction? And if you have trouble tying it to a time frame, it's kind of like a nice to do but not have to do, then you're going to have trouble moving people, right? So you always want to have time frames associated with the work you do and why it makes sense to get started now versus tomorrow or the next day or a year from now, right? And this is why sometimes you'll have a good appointment with a client on the phone or in person and they don't move forward, nothing happens. Well, maybe you haven't tied it to a time frame that they're feeling the need, compelled sense of urgency, right? A sense of social proof. Now, most financial professionals can't use testimonials, all right? So we leave testimonials aside. But there's other types of social proof. First of all, working from referrals and introductions, which if you know me, that's my main body of expertise, it's a sign of social proof, is it not? Your CPA refers you. A friend refers you, introduces you. That's a form of social proof. Another form of social proof, which is very powerful, is when you do educational events or client appreciation events, where you have, first of all, for your clients, when your clients are gathering with other clients who like you, trust you, gather with other clients who like you, trust you, then what's the net result? They all like you, trust you more, right? And so now, let's say you have 80 or 70% clients at this educational event or this social event, and you have 20 or 30% prospects. Now they're seeing social proof, right? They're seeing all the different people talk about you in a good way and the kind of relationships you have. So I'm a big believer in social event marketing, and we'll do a webinar for WebX at some point. And if you come into my world a little bit, then we'll have an opportunity to serve you that as well. But these are some of the things that will move people to take action. So please start to populate with questions if you have any questions, because we're getting close to that time. So I want to introduce a new word to your vocabulary. And let me tell you how I came about this. I was thinking, all right, relevance. You got to be relevant to attract their attention, but you also got to move them to take action. You got to be compelling. But if you're no longer relevant, then they're going to stop paying attention, right? So what I've realized is these two really go together on a regular basis, right? So the new word I want to give you is compellevant, right? We want to create compelling relevance. And what I mean by that is how you talk about your value, how you think about, how you believe in, how you communicate your value to prospects, to centers of influence, and to your clients has to be continually relevant and continually compelling, right? You have clients that have been with you for 10 years, 15 years, and you've been talking about something for a long time, and they're not acting on that one idea, right? Well, you haven't created that compellevance, right? They're not seeing as it relevant to them, or you're not giving them a reason to move, to take action. So I've had banks, I've had many of my clients start to have these workshops. Sometimes they hire me to come in, do a workshop. Sometimes you think it should be 1L, Jan? This word doesn't exist. It's a made-up word. So I've gone back and forth, to be honest with you, on the 1L or the 2. I appreciate the feedback. But anyway, my clients, they've started to get together with everybody in the firm and say, all right, guys, we want to work on how we perceive our value and how we communicate our value in a way that's compellevant, right? That's relevant and compelling and relevant and compelling and relevant and compelling. So let's see. A compellevant value proposition, 1L or 2s. It's continually relevant, right? Maintained. Donald saying 2. All right, so Jan and Donald, you guys can go into a sub room and can battle this out. Oh boy, right? Ultimately determines the fit, right? That's the main purpose or the bottom line purpose, I should say, the ultimate purpose. So I got some more content. Don't go anywhere, guys. I got some good stuff coming here. So this is what your prospective and current clients need to know about you and your firm, right? These are the things that they need to know. Now, they don't always know they need to know these. I'm having trouble talking today, right? But these are the things that we want to make sure we can answer, right? What you do, who you do it, why do you do it, who you do it for, what makes you a little different, how they benefit, right? And then ultimately, is it a fit for me, right? These are the questions that when we talk about our value, we want to answer. So I'm going to give you one example of some verbiage here you can start to try on for your own business. So what is an expert? An expert is a person who has special skill or knowledge in some particular field, specialist authority. That's you. Are you not an expert? Yet I found a lot of people in this business have trouble saying that they're an expert. All right, well, soften it up. I'll give you a way to soften it up. Now, you could call yourself a specialist. You could actually be both. And a specialist is someone devotes him or herself to a subject or a particular branch of a pursuit, or in your case, it could be towards a target market, right? Small business owners within a certain industry, employees or executives in a certain company, et cetera, et cetera. So here's a formula to get started on when somebody says, what do you do? Or if you're writing your profile for a LinkedIn or whatever it is, right? So here's what I recommend. I recommend you start with words such as my expertise. So that's how to soften the expert. Rather than saying I'm an expert in, say my expertise is in, and you can see how that softens it up just a little bit. It displays your confidence without being arrogant and without feeding into preconceived notions. So we know that when it comes to insurance and investments and financial planning, some people have preconceived notions about that, and they're not always favorable, right? Maybe they had a bad experience. Who knows, right? Maybe they were listening to Susie Orman and, listen to the financial pornography out there. So we don't know what their predilection is towards this. So rather than saying I'm a financial advisor or I'm an insurance specialist or I sell life insurance or whatever it is you might say, an employee benefits specialist, that's a little better. Just my expertise is in, right? I work with, we work with, it demonstrates that your target market qualifies people. This is who we work with, right? I'll give you some sample language in a second here. Who want to. This speaks to the benefits. And because what you do, it has to do with money, and money intersects every aspect of one's life, it pretty easily creates emotion, right? They don't want to run out of money. They don't want to pay any more tax than they have to pay, right? These automatically speak to an emotion. And then I found that this quote-unquote hook, thanks, Jan. Jan says she's loving this, even with 2 L's. I guess she likes it. So this brings it to life a little bit more. And what I mean by that is when you say, my expertise is in this, and we work with who want to do this, okay, they may get that, they may not. But when you say, for example, or you say, can I tell you a real quick story about somebody I just worked with today? Or let me tell you about something that happened today in my office. If you can use a little humor. So I was working with a guy in Australia, and he says, I'm kind of fun. I'm playful. I want to use my humor and do this. And I said, all right, what business you're in? Well, I'm a mortgage broker. I said, so when people say what you do, tell me you're a mortgage broker, but most of the time you feel like a family therapist, right? And a family counselor. And he started doing that. People laugh, and then they say, so tell me more about what you do. And it opens things up when you use a little humor. So now I'll give you mine, and then I'll move it to the financial world. So my expertise is in accelerating business growth through a more effective value proposition, referrals, and introductions. Now that I'm writing a book on value proposition, that's gotten added to this, right? One could argue that's a little bit long, and I get that. We work with financial professionals and their firms, very clear. Financial professionals like you, right, and their firms, meaning leadership, trainers, C-level, whatever, who want to increase their revenue without spending more on marketing. Now that hits an emotional level, right? Because everybody wants to increase their revenue and they don't want to spend more on marketing if they can help it, right? I could say, depending on who I'm talking to, who, want to wean themselves away from bad leads or whatever, stop spending money on bad leads. I helped a Texas-based firm go from internet leads and seminars to 100% referral-based practice. Past year was their best year in 22-year history working from referrals, right? So that puts a little bit of meat on the bone. It makes it a little bit more tangible. So here's a hypothetical one, guys. You're going to have to work one, and this is not easy work. I get this. We had our last boot camp, and we did this the first part of the boot camp, and brains are hurting doing this sometimes. My expertise is in personal finance, such as insurance and investments. We work with executives and small business owners who want to maximize their investments, minimize their risks, and create lasting wealth. Just yesterday, I was sitting with a small business owner who was introduced to me by one of his colleagues. Now, notice I say he was introduced to me by one of his colleagues. What am I doing? I'm planting the seed for referrals down the road. I'm saying we work from referrals, introductions. He told me he was both relieved, excited about his newfound clarity, da-da-da-da-da. So now, are you going to say this all at once, or is this going to be little pieces? It's going to depend on the situation, right? So, if you're at a social situation, for instance, you're probably not going to say the whole thing here. You'll probably say, well, my expertise is in personal finance, such as, insurance, investments, and we work mostly with executives and small business owners, right? And, what do you do? I did this, I did it, Well, I found that our clients, here's what they want to do. They want to maximize their investments, they want to minimize their risk, and ultimately, my clients want to create lasting wealth, and that's what we help them do, right? For example, right? So sometimes this is broken up. It's not necessarily something you're going to say all at once just like this. But if you can answer these questions, you're going to be much more confident, and you're not going to ramble and ramble and ramble with no jargon, right? Notice there's no jargon here, right? There's no, industry talk here. This is all words that anybody could say. So don't forget your free value proposition generator. Just go to, valuepropositiongenerator.com and you'll get this. It'll go deeper with a lot of these questions I didn't have time for today. So questions, what questions do you have? I don't see any in the question field right now. So I'm gonna hem and haw just for a second. Let me tell you how this fits into the whole referral process that I teach. If you know the work I do, then you know that my first 4 books were on referrals. And by the way, there's my email address at the bottom. And if you have a question that comes to you later and you forgot to ask it on this, then that's fine. So here's the way my business evolved. I think you'll find this interesting, is that when I first started doing this 25 years ago, I was mostly hired to teach folks like yourself how to ask for referrals without begging, pushing, right? How to do it in an appropriate manner that wasn't overly aggressive and creepy, et cetera, et cetera. And so then I realized that a lot of financial folks weren't as referable as they needed to be. So they were asking, but they weren't getting very good results. Not so much that they weren't asking in a good way, that they weren't referable yet. So we started to work on that. And then, of course, the do not call regulations come out, and caller ID, and all the different ways over the last 10, 15 years that people have stopped answering the phone. Then I realized we got to start working on introductions. We started to get connected to these people, right? So from now on, guys, gals, when you're talking with prospects, clients, centers of influence, don't use the word referrals, right? Those are our words internally. Use the word introductions, right? Talk about introductions. If someone comes up with a friend, a family member, say, great, let's talk about how you introduce me to her. And so then what I realized, all right, Donald's got a question. I'll get you in a second, Donald. And so then, of course, then what you got to do is you got to reach out to your prospect, right? And so I was interviewing some folks, pretty high-level folks with a firm. I was getting ready to do a speech, and I realized that these guys and gals, I said to you, what do you say when you reach out to your prospects from a referral? And I realized the things they were saying were pretty weak. And it was the referral or the strength of the referral that carried them through a poor value proposition. But they weren't converting as many prospects into clients as they wanted, and they weren't able to move up market the way they wanted to do. So they weren't talking about their value in a way that would actually move them up market, right? So that's when I started to turn my attention to this value proposition. And the truth of this permeates really everything you do. How you perceive and believe in your value is really the foundation of your business. And then how you communicate that value determines how successful you're going to be in this world. All right, so Don says, how do you get phone calls returned? Well, have a compelling, relevant message. All right, what do I mean by that? So certainly you want to do a little bit of your homework, right? You want to ask your referral source some information about them. Remember I said, find out what's going on in their world that's most important to them. And if you can refer to that in your message and say, George told me that you have kids in junior high school. You're just now starting to think a little bit more towards college. And certainly one of the things we do is help our clients make sure they have enough money set aside for college, and they also can take advantage of the opportunities for money from other sources, and would love to have a chance to chat with you a little bit. So you make it relevant to them, right? Sometimes you can use some humor. You can, if it's not a referral, you still want to look them up on the internet to see if you can identify who they are and get a sense of them. Take that 5 minutes, not 5 minutes, that 30 seconds, that 2 minutes to get to know. So you leave a more relevant message. Another thing about return phone calls, Donald, is you got to be careful about sounding robotic-like. I can't tell you how many messages I get from folks and how I've listened to people give their messages. Each person is a person, and you got to slow down. And a lot of times you might feel a little nervous, or you've got to do so many dials an hour because your manager is hovering over you or whatever. But you got to slow down, and you got to be genuine, and you got to be real. I personally have found that email works better than voicemail. Generally speaking, sometimes a combination is good. And sometimes when I have trouble reaching someone through a voice, and I'll send an email, and then maybe I'll give a call and leave a voicemail. Then I'll turn to LinkedIn and I'll send them an email, or I'll request to link up with them and tell them why. And sometimes that does the trick. Renee, let me see if I can, Leslie, I'm sorry. See if I can see your full question here. Do you have examples of emails to prospects? They've met once with an advisor and we can't get them well, so if you've met with them and you can't get them to meet with you again, then you probably haven't exacerbated the gap. And what I mean by that is you haven't talked about the gap between where they are and where they want to be. So here's a simple way to think about this, and this is something you want to do on a first appointment. All right, so the first thing you want to do is you want to celebrate wherever they are. You want to say, tell me, start with the positive. Tell me about some of the things that, some of the financial decisions you've made you feel really good about. Or you can even start broader. What's going on in your life that's really important to you these days? What's on your radar of life right now? Or George told me that probably one of the most important things you're thinking about right now is this. Is he accurate with that? Anything else big I should know about? And tell me some of the financial decisions you've made you feel good about, right? And then maybe tell you one or two, and they're bragging. That's cool. And then you say, can you identify one or two or three people that have made financial decisions that you really respect? People who have done a good job with their personal finance. And so what you're doing is you're building some rapport. You're getting them to feel comfortable. You're not going for the jugular right away. What's wrong? What's missing in your financial life. And also you're learning their relationship to financial decisions. You're also learning about other people that they know who might be people you want to get introduced to later. So you're starting to create a little inventory of potential referral prospects, right? And so thank you, Sally, for the good comment. And so then you start to go towards, what is there anything that you're feeling concerned about? Do you have an overriding major concern around your financial world that would be good for me to know about? And then you can start to dig into that. And then, so you want to get a sense of where they are. Then you want to get a sense of where they want to go. So you could say, if we're meeting 5 years from today, or depending on how old they are and the work you do, 10 years from today, what has to happen for you to feel really good, really strong and confident about your financial world, right? Or it could be about retirement, what they want their retirement to look like, et cetera, their legacy. And so that's their here and that's their there. And then you want to say, so getting from here to there, what obstacles do you see coming down the road? What challenges do you see that you might be facing? And then you say, and what opportunities do you see coming down the road? Could be an inheritance, could be who knows what it is, right? So you're learning about their here, about their there. This clarity, creating this clarity, and then you showing them that you can help them get there to where they want to be, that usually will create a second appointment, right? That will create a lot of value very quickly. And so it's all focused about them. It has nothing to do with any product. We're not doing any illustrations. You can do this on the phone. We're just getting to know them and really listen to them before we start to even suggest that we might be able to move forward and help them and make some recommendations. So let's see, I do both calls and emails and try to compel them to move and take the second appointment. Well, it's almost too late. If you haven't done the right thing on that appointment, then there's a good chance that you've lost them. Either they're not feeling clear on what the next step would be and where you will take them on that next appointment. And quite often we're very, in our effort to be, not too pushy and nice and kind and gentle, and I get that. I'm that way most of the time. But in that, we also need to have confidence. We need to give them a path of what the next step is. One of the things you might try doing, Leslie, is let them know what your process looks like if you're not doing that already. So the purpose of today is for this, right? So we're going to jump into that in a couple minutes. And then should that, at the end of that, we'll do a little assessment. Is it making sense to have a second conversation? And then we'll do that. And this is what we'll cover when we get together the next time. And then I'll probably make some recommendations for you. And then, so you outline the whole process and you give them a feeling, you foreshadow little points of value that are going to come even in future meetings. So that's one thing. I'll give you one more quick thing because we're about out of time. But another thing is talking about your personal why. I haven't talked about that on here, but why you do what you do. And that builds a certain kind of rapport on a first meeting that really can make all the difference in the world. Tips for newbies without much influence and virtually very little networks. Is cold outreach appalling? No, you got to do what you got to do. We should, we should always be willing to jump on the phone and talk to people that we think have a sense. But one of the things, if I was new, when I was new in this business, I picked a niche, right? My first niche was printing industry, because I owned the book publishing company, as I told you, and I knew that world. So that was my niche. It's much easier to create a reputation in a niche. So I would find the niche or two to start working at and start to create a reputation. And I can't pick up the phone or email for prospecting. Hooey. So then you got to get out and about. You got to hang out where the money is, right? Whether it's chambers of commerce, or attach yourself to a community service or a charity, a philanthropic organization, get on the membership committee, get on the donation committee, hang around where the money is. How do you get people to give you their email? Many people won't do it. Well, you could tell them you've got something of value that you want to send to them, right? It's always leading with value. If it's a referral source, you want to get introduced with email, and then you have the prospect's email. So that's one of the best ways to get the email, is get introduced through email. Mike says, enjoy. Want to know more about the personal why? You're welcome, Jen. So, all right. So let me finish up with the personal why for those of you still with us. So the personal why is essentially why you do what you do, that's in a client-centered form. Meaning, why you got into this business is maybe you like dealing with finance and you want to make a lot of money and have flexibility over your schedule. Okay, that's your you-centered why. But somewhere along the line, hopefully you're realizing that you really do provide value to individuals, families, businesses. Now, some people come in with their why. Some people come in because they had a loved one die, a parent, without leaving much behind. They saw how their mother struggled after their father passed. There's a lot of different things that you come in with a why. It could be something you observed along the way if you're new, if you're one of those newbies. And maybe you hijack someone else's why for a while. Now, you don't lie. You don't say it's your story, but you say, you know, let me tell you a little bit about why I do what I do. And it really hit me more than ever before when my colleague was telling me about something that happened with his client. And that's when I realized that was my epiphany. And Carol Upshur, she's a financial professional out on the West Coast. She had a situation where she and her husband lost some money. They got back on their feet. She becomes an advisor. So she says, that's a little bit about what we do. Let me tell you a little bit about why I do what I do. And she tells a little bit of that story, and she's a little self-revealing. And she says, so my mission, my job, every time I wake up is to make sure what happened to me or anything like that never happens to anybody else. And she told me when she started doing that, she started getting unsolicited referrals from prospects even. If you want to have influence over someone's financial present and future, they got to have a sense of who you are. They want to have a sense that what drives you, what makes you authentic. One guy I was talking to earlier today, I just happen to have a lot of coaching calls today. This guy, has been in business for 20 years. I said, do you have your personal why? Do you have your client-centered why? He says, oh yeah. He says, but I haven't really talked about it much. I said, you want to start talking about it, and you don't wait for them to become a client. You talk to them in your very first meeting. Now, in person's better than on the phone. If your business is just done on the phone, then that's fine. That's what you dealt with. But in person's always better. And people will listen to you differently because there's usually a story attached to that. So if you don't have your why yet, start to talk to some of your colleagues and see what their whys are. Look at get that compelling value proposition generator that I talked about. That'll work you through a little bit of this. And this is something you share at your first meeting all the time. And if you stay with me, you'll eventually see as we go through how to ask referrals that you can bring the why back into when you talk about the possibility for referrals or introductions, how that why will come back and help you and makes a huge difference for you. So guys, we're over time. I appreciate you guys being here. There's my email address. If you have questions that didn't get answered or something occurs to you later, just shoot it over. I'll do my best to respond as quickly as I can. We do have another webinar coming up. You're welcome, Leslie, on October 10th. If you get the value proposition generator, we'll tell you about when our next webinar is on October 10th around LinkedIn. And I'm teaming up with Claire Aiken with Indigo Marketing Agency to talk to you about how to use LinkedIn to build your business. So until later, my question is, are you radically relevant? Thanks for watching, guys.